Okay, I'm going to cover kind of a broad start over. I'm going to cover a broad overview of the gaslighting that has been taking place in America for the last 45 years. I'm going to stick to the last 45 years because that's my lifetime basically. I was born in the late 70s. The first president that I remember was Ronald Reagan. I remember the discussions around the dinner table with family members losing their farms in the early 80s during the farm crisis. I remember my parents, both factory workers, very nervous around the dinner table about wondering if they were going to still have their jobs because of the down economy in the early 80s. So I'm going to stick to the last 45 years because that's been my life experience. So um, we're going to cover a broad range of topics, and then we'll have individual breakouts over, the course of the next couple weeks on the different individual topics that we're going to cover. So first, I'm going to start with, just public education. So I'm a product of public education. I think public education is what you make of it. My mom always told me education was the great equalizer. I believe that's why our politicians and our oligarchs want to tear apart public education because they do not want middle and working class people to have access to the great equalizer. But I will tell you, my mom always told me that education is the one thing that nobody can take away from you. Once you have it, it's yours, and you can do with it whatever you want to, and it is what you make it. What you put into it is what you get out of it. So that I believe is one of the reasons why our oligarchs and politicians have torn down public education for years. They underfunded it, gutted it, put outrageous regulations on it, put a lot of responsibility on teachers without giving them the tools or the authority to actually meet the requirements or teach the children in their classrooms. And so for years, politicians have told us your schools are failing, but they were failing because they weren't being funded. Teachers weren't being given what they needed to be successful. And then we were told, the solution to this is private school vouchers. Because look at these private schools. These private schools are so successful. Um, so we really need to, give people choice in their education. And private schools are successful. I will 100% give you that. But private schools also get to pick and choose their students. Private schools do not have to take kids with learning disabilities who require extra attention and extra services in order to make gains in their education. Private schools can discriminate against students from a low socioeconomic status who might come to school hungry because their parents can't afford groceries for them to have breakfast every day. I can attest to the fact that when I'm hungry, it's hard to learn, it's hard to focus. Um, Also, maybe because of the, money situation at home, there's no parent at home in the evenings to help with homework or to read to that child. My mom read to me from the time she was pregnant with me. She worked in a factory, but she knew how important education was. She read to us when she was pregnant with us, and I was reading books by the time I was 4 years old. That's because of what my mom put into it. A lot of families, they have to work two jobs. They don't have the time to do all that extra reading. They may not have access to books to do all that extra reading. The parents may not be able to read very well in order to do that extra reading. And studies will show that children who are exposed to reading prior to starting school will do better in school than children who have not been exposed to reading. So that's the gaslighting we've been subjected to about our public schools. And they've used that gaslighting to then funnel more money away from public schools into private school vouchers, which then leads to further deterioration of the opportunity of the children in our public schools. And then let's talk about trickle-down economics. I know everybody loves trickle-down economics. If you're a Gen Xer like me, you'll remember voodoo economics from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So basically, we've been told our whole lives that if we give more tax cuts to corporations and the wealthy, they will create jobs and everybody will have a job and everybody will be able to afford a house and groceries and a car. And, well, in the history of my life, I remember lots and lots and lots of tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy. And I remember more years of not enough jobs than I remember years of enough jobs. So there's evidence number one that trickle down economics is a big lie. The other thing that you have to think about is what do corporations and the wealthy do with those massive tax cuts? Because they're not creating jobs with them. Let's just be honest. Well, what happens is when we get into an economic downturn, and those of us in the middle and working class have to do things like sell our retirement investments in order to make ends meet until we can find another job. Those wealthy people take advantage of the down market and they buy back stocks at a discount and then they own more of their company. And then when we get a job again and we start investing our 401k, we have to invest at the higher prices. So, one of the things that we've been told, or I've been heard for my entire life, is it's a redistribution of wealth or it's a transfer of wealth when, you know, low income citizens get SNAP benefits or welfare or Section 8 housing or, you know, seniors are getting Social Security and Medicare. You know, it's a redistribution of wealth from the wealthy to the poor, and you know we can't have that because this is a capitalist country, and we need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and not be taking handouts. Well, um, when we see these major tax cuts to the wealthy, and they use it to buy back stocks or give exorbitant compensation packages to their CEO or golden parachutes to executives that have made poor decisions and are going out the door. Or they've been putting it in offshore accounts or foreign investments. That is a redistribution of wealth to the middle and working class, or from the middle and working class to the wealthy and to corporations. So they have been gaslighting us for years, telling us that, you know, the people getting food stamps, the people getting Section 8 housing, they're taking our tax money, they're taking our tax dollars. When in reality, our tax dollars, the majority of what is, you know, going as subsidies to other entities in the country, um, it's going to the wealthy and corporations. The majority of what's going out the treasury from our tax dollars to subsidize things is not going to subsidize individuals who need a hand up to make a living because they're poor. It's going to wealthy people and corporations. Another one, you know, we've been told that vaccines are dangerous. We've been told vaccines cause autism. That is not true. Uh, I had chickenpox as a kid. I had mumps as a toddler. I'm very happy to be vaccinated. I do not want polio to come back. But we've been told for years that vaccines are dangerous and we shouldn't be putting them in our body. Um, well, I think we're seeing the repercussions of that now. You know, there have been measles outbreaks, there have been outbreaks of whooping cough. There's currently a tuberculosis outbreak in Kansas, I think. You know, we haven't seen those things for years because we've had good public health programs where people get vaccinated. I believe like if 95% of a population gets vaccinated, then you'll have a herd immunity and it will keep those diseases out of your population. Um, but we've had, you know, influential people telling us that vaccines are dangerous for years, and they're not. They save lives. So, um, what we get then, you know, when the people are spreading that vaccines are dangerous, we get underfunded healthcare systems. We get pharmaceutical companies that then make more money because now they're selling products that relieve symptoms or cure disease when we could have been vaccinated and never had those diseases to begin with. Let's see, another one, environmental protections. They've said, oh, we have to roll back environmental protections because environmental regulations are too expensive for corporations. Well, now we're living in an environment where we have poison in our water. I'm in Iowa, where we have the one of the fastest growing new cancer rates in the country, and we are one of the top states for cancer prevalence in our population in the country. Um, we've been told that we need to roll back banking regulations because we need to open up the economy and spur investment. Well, okay, then we got the savings and loan scandal in the late 80s, and then we had the housing market crash in 2008. Um, we're on another roll right now where we want to roll back banking regulations. So I hate to see what happens here in the next couple of years if we continue down that path, because 100 years ago we were going down that path after a pandemic, the flu pandemic of 1918, and then we and the roaring 20s where we just let regulations on banking and investments go, and we let speculative investments rule the roost, and we ended up with stock market crash and a Great Depression that lasted for a decade. So we have been gaslit about banking regulations being too restrictive on business, when really banking regulations are there to protect the middle and working class and to protect our nest eggs so that we can survive in retirement. What else? They've gaslit us saying, labor unions are bad and labor unions get in between workers and their employers. Well, labor unions are the reason that we have health and safety regulations. Labor unions are the reason that we have child labor protections so that your 12-year-old isn't sewing in a factory that burns down in the middle of New York. If you want to look it up, there's the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, one of the worst industrial fire disasters in the nation's history. Um, but labor unions are not bad. Labor unions have given us a lot of protections. In fact, a couple days ago in the U.S. House, a bill was filed to completely abolish OSHA. That's another regulatory agency that gets complained about a lot and said they're bad for business. Everything that is written in OSHA is written in blood. If there is an OSHA regulation about it, that means somebody died, a lot of people died, a lot of people were injured very badly, to the point losing limbs badly. So, but yeah, a bill was filed a couple days ago in the U.S. House to completely abolish all worker health and safety protections across the nation. So we've been gaslit to say that we need to open up the economy and roll back these regulations, mostly so that your kids can go work in dangerous factories. Let's talk about the national debt. We've been gaslit for years about how liberals are tax and spend liberals and Republicans are fiscally responsible. But I'm telling you, in the 45 years of my life that I can remember, the only time I've seen a balanced budget was in the 90s, and that was a Democratic president. And every time the national debt has exploded, it's been a Republican president. And a lot of that exploding national debt has gone to finance tax cuts for the wealthy. Because, we need to give them more money so they create these non-existent jobs, I guess, maybe. And then let's talk about censorship and freedom of expression. So we have the same people complaining that they're being censored online, all the while they're running for the school board and banning books for our kids. And what books are they banning? Oh, they're banning books that talk about race and the history of race in America and the terrible things that were done in the history of this country to African Americans, to the indigenous people that lived here before any of us came here. So they want to ban these books because they're not comfortable hearing about these things. Books about sexuality, gender, families with two moms, families with two dads. Basically, if it makes them uncomfortable or if it doesn't match their social ideology, they want to ban it. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want any kids to hear about it. And honestly, those things should be talked about. We need to learn about history so we don't repeat it. We need to be made aware of the things that happened in the past so that we can say no more. Because just because it's not happening to me now, just because it didn't happen to my ancestors, it happened and it needs to be addressed. We need to make sure that people know about it. So when they see the signs that it's coming, people can stand up and say, no, we said never again. But we've been gaslit to say, you know what, censorship of things that don't match what the popular people want. Well, if that censorship's okay. Um, but censorship of those popular people on social media, when their posts are getting blocked, well, that censorship's not okay because they're the popular opinion and their opinion needs to be kept out there. So censorship is bad. It narrows minds, it stifles critical thinking, and it basically turns our education system, if we're banning books in school, it turns our education system into a propaganda system. If you look at Oklahoma, I think they just got the Bible put back in public schools. I thought we had separation of church and state. I guess not. I'm not sure. But, I mean, we're being gaslit by our own Constitution now. It says we have separation of church and state. We got people putting the Ten Commandments and Bibles in schools. And then let's not forget about the billionaires, because where would we be without the billionaires? Because they've worked so hard to make all of their money and build all of their wealth. Well, actually, that's a lie too. Most of them were born with it, or they got it from somebody in their family. But they've got us all believing that, if we win the lottery, if we're the next big lottery winner, if we have this next big, magic invention, we can be the next millionaire or billionaire. We can be just like them. Well, the truth of the matter is that's a lie, because those of us in the middle and working class are closer to being on the street, losing our house, living in our car, if we have one, than we are being the next millionaire. I mean, that's just the truth. So we have got to stop listening to and believing all of these lies that we're being told that are turning us into lemmings, and basically have transformed this country into being ripe for the picking, turning into an oligarchy or a plutocracy where he who has the gold makes the rules and nobody else can do anything about it. We are on the brink and looking over the cliff of not ever being able to do anything about this and come back from it. So if we do not open our eyes and start thinking and critically thinking about what we're being told compared to what we are seeing go on in the world around us, we are in grave danger of losing our democracy or our constitutional republic, our representative government, where our representatives are supposed to be representing our best interests and the greater good for the whole country, right? Not just for the popular, not just for the small faction that have the most money. If we do not wake up and start critically thinking and evaluating what we hear versus what we see versus, what's actually happening, we are going to lose our representative model of government. And we're going to be going the way of like Hungary, where we're an authoritarian country. And that is not what our ancestors fought and died for. I don't think that's what we want. So this is my call to the American people. You need to wake up, look at what's going around you, compare it to what you're being told. And if those two things don't match up, you better think about what you're going to do about it and how you're going to vote in the next election, because if we don't get it turned around in the next election, we might not get another chance.